Welcome to On the Road with David Vieira. This is our occasional series about the daily hustle and flow of Massachusetts public life, seen through the eyes of our 3rd Barnstable County representative. Representative Vieira has been a good friend to FCTV over the years, and we certainly have seen a lot of him locally, especially in his role as moderator of our biannual town meetings. So, when he extended an invite to spend a day with him on Beacon Hill, sounded too good to pass up. We visited as Representative Vieira was welcoming a group of hand-picked students from all around Massachusetts, brought to the State House by the Daughters of the Revolution. In this edition of our show, we're going to enjoy a dual perspective on local American history, from the standpoint of a seasoned lawmaker and through the eyes of young people seeing the political process up close for the very first time.
There are award recipients from the district. I haven't seen who actually was able to get up here yet today, so we'll try to identify them. Is it? There was quite a few in there?
Huge amount of people, yeah.
Good. I love it when a plan comes together. All right, welcome, DAR good citizens. If we can kind of hover over here, we're going to begin. The House is in session today with the state budget. So we are going to begin in the gallery of the House chamber as we open up the session for today's budget negotiations.
All rise. Members and guests are asked to remain standing and join the DAR Good Citizens students in pledging allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
The third floor is the House chamber, the Senate chamber, and the governor's office. So that's the seat of powers on the 3rd floor. Welcome to the Senate. When you're driving around the Commonwealth and you see a sign and it says so many miles to Boston, it's to that chandelier. It's considered the center of the city of Boston here at the top of Beacon Hill. There's a fish up there. So the Senate, when we left in 1898, got a little jealous of our sacred cod, so they put their holy mackerel inside of the chandelier, and the mackerel points north, sort of signifying to the members of the collegial body of the Senate that true north should be the principle of public policy. Speaking of that, look at the round table. Who used to sit around a round table? The senators do? Way back in England.
Round table knights.
The Knights of the Round Table, right? Excalibur. King Arthur was the first amongst equals, right? And so the Senate president is the first amongst the equals here in the Senate. But if you lean down a little bit, look at these chairs. They're all at a different height, aren't they? Some are higher, some are lower. On the first day of the session, the seats are calibrated so that every senator, when sitting, looks directly in the eyes of all the other senators in the circle. Now, that's much different than the House chamber, right? You saw that sort of like an auditorium style. When we did the opening, the speaker and I were up high on the rostrum and down in the so it's a very different atmosphere than we have here in the Senate, of this collegial circle of all equal senators representing 100 and some odd thousand constituents in their districts. If you look at the packets, the Senate still has these printed dockets, and they're tied up with a little red ribbon, right? You've heard the term cutting through the red tape? It's bureaucratic. We have to cut through the red tape. Anybody have an idea where that comes from? So when Parliament was created in England, the monarch still had the ability to veto legislation of the Parliament. And so at the end of a vote in Parliament, the legislation was engrossed on parchment, rolled up, tied with the red ribbon, and brought to the monarch for review. And so the red tape harkens back to the days of the English Parliament. Now, English Parliament's been around for a while. I said Massachusetts has the oldest continuously active written constitution in the world. So what happened to England? Who's ever read the British Constitution? Anybody ever read the British Constitution? Everyone here tells the truth. Because I always usually have one or two hands that go up. England has never had a written constitution. It is a constitutional democracy without a written constitution. It's based on the common law, and then it's based on the actions of the Parliament after the establishment of the Parliament and the judicial system. So good for all of you. You all told the truth. Usually somebody's like, I read it. And it's like, really? Can you get me a copy? I'd love to read it myself, right? So this chamber went under renovation right before COVID. And prior to that, the busts that were in here were the busts that you see now. And a couple of them were empty in the front there. But the new bust after the renovation is Frederick Douglass, whose quote is also up here: "Truth, justice, liberty, and humanity will ultimately prevail." So Frederick Douglass, as a freed slave, ended up coming back and residing in Massachusetts, mostly in New Bedford, and was part of our civil rights history, not only in the nation, but here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And so to try to bring some more diversity into the chamber after the renovation, Frederick Douglass, there was a bust that was cast specifically for the chamber. One was on loan for a while. And then there's another area there that's empty. And right now the Senate is reviewing with a committee and looking at female figures in the history of the Commonwealth so that we could bring the first female bust into the chamber representing the diversity of the history of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Not sure when that's going to happen, but they're working on it. I know they've already had some meetings and trying to pin that thing down. So let's, what we're going to do, I'm going to tell you what's across the hall because it's a small area, and we're just going to walk through if you want to take some pictures in there. When you get into to the next room, you're going to see some columns in the middle of the room. Those columns are the only original wooden columns that are still left from the construction of the building. You'll see a gallery, small gallery, behind you when we walk in. And then you'll see some notable figures of Massachusetts history that were Senate presidents, including Horace Mann. And Horace Mann left the Senate as the president of the Senate to become the first Secretary of Education in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and gave his speech advocating for the creation of public schools in Massachusetts while he was in the Senate. You'll also see the first female to ever be elected Senate president, my former senator, and I served with her concurrent 2 terms, Senator Therese Murray from Plymouth, Massachusetts. Her portrait is in that chamber as well. So, if you have an earmark for your local school or fire department or road project, and all of a sudden you get up and you're fighting the narrative of the leadership, will that impact your ability to get your amendment, the financial amendments in the budget, to come back to your district? And that's a constant balancing act, right? You push back. How far do you push back? How much will leadership allow you to push back? Push back too much, you get nothing. Push back a little, okay, we understand. Or do you just, well, vote red, vote green. You didn't see it today, but it's funny. Occasionally, the speaker's usually not in the chamber. The speaker hasn't been in the chamber yet today since you've been there. He's in his office. He can vote from his office under the rules. Occasionally, they will push the wrong button for the speaker. And the leadership will start to vote the way the button's been pushed. Members will come into the chamber, vote, and then leave. And then they'll realize, uh-oh, the speaker was going to vote against this, not for it. So they'll switch it, and all of a sudden you'll see the lights change. Brrr, and you'll hear people running up the steps, right? Coming back. Get back to the chamber. That was not...
We apply the law. We don't take the law and apply it in different situations. We take situations and we apply them to the law. And the law says here in Massachusetts, we are not to detain someone a moment, not 12 hours, not 12 seconds. When your case is concluded, you leave. What the federal government wants us to do is expend resources to hold people beyond that time. That's a constitutional problem.
But to be able to see 3 live debates during one period of time is very unique. You're the only group I've ever had. I've been here for 14 years. You're the only group I've ever had here where the timing hit to have that much debate.
Everybody say Massachusetts!
So I mentioned earlier that Representative Sylvia, who I just found out this morning is a Good Citizen Award recipient as well. He was my college class president at the American University in DC. And so we were in student government together, and he appointed me to the judicial board, and now we're actually in the real government together.
We need more young people like you to get involved. It's really important, especially today.
So there are 351 flags up here, set in order of incorporation, and for years, they've just been up there. In my district, the town of Mashpee redesigned the town seal recently, and we have a new flag that's on order, and we'll be working with the town of Mashpee to have a little ceremony in here, and for the first time in years, we'll actually take a flag down and put the new municipal flag up. This area, again, is sort of the focal point of anything dealing with healthcare policy and rallies, and if the unions are coming and they'll meet here and do things. And for us down in southeastern Mass on the Cape, there's a place called Penakees Island. There's a plaque here that recognizes Dr. Parker and his wife for running Penakees Island. Penakees Island was the leprosy quarantine for Massachusetts, the hospital, for a number of years. If you were diagnosed with leprosy in Massachusetts, you were sent to Penakees Island at the end of the Elizabethan chains out by Cunninghunk. And the family lived in the house, which is now a schoolhouse. It was a residential schoolhouse, but now it's a day program. But there was a house there. The folks are still buried out there. There's a graveyard that is still out there, and the old laundry where they would do the laundry on site, the steam laundry. And so we recognize the Parker house, the Parker family. The island was then taken over by the Department of Fish and Game. And so now it is a wildlife sanctuary. For a period of time, we used to breed rabbits on that island to bring out to wildlife management areas in other parts of the state for hunting and but right now it's under a sublease with a group called the Penakees Island School. And some of the schools you can rent to go out for day trips, of STEM programming. There are some overnight programs in the summer, but they still manage the wildlife piece out there under the Department of Fish and Game. And then the last room that we're going to do today is the room that you started in. Those are the big doors that we just mentioned, only open 3 times. When we walk in here, I want you to look at the left. You're going to see the large standing portrait of Abraham Lincoln. That's one of only 4 in the United States. He hated to be portrayed standing because he was so self-conscious of being that tall. So there's one here, there's one in Pennsylvania in a municipal hall, there's one at the National Portrait Gallery with the Smithsonian in DC, and one in a private collection. I'm not sure who owns the private one. This is George Washington, much different than the bust we saw in the Senate, right? Anybody know why he's dressed in a cloak? So he is being portrayed in the toga, and specifically for the Roman Emperor Cincinnatus. So in the United States, there's a Society of the Cincinnati. You are all members of the Daughters of the American Revolution. So members of the Daughters of the American Revolution have to show a lineage to the colonial period, right? The Society of the Cincinnati, you have to show lineage to an officer of the Continental Army during the Revolution. And that's the Society of the Cincinnatus. And so when they decided to cast this commission, they wanted to show Washington as the farmer, citizen, president, right? And soldier. He came, he served as the general. Then he served as the first president of the United States, and he decided to go back to the farm in Virginia and go back into private life and not to continue in public service, continue to control. No, I'm done, I did my service, I'm out.
I'd like to know, what about history you really like? Maybe Massachusetts history, huh?
I mean, yeah. Massachusetts history, American history. I think I study history in my free time and in school because I understand that it's the source of the world we live in. So every modern day problem has its roots going far back. So we got to understand the history of the country in which we live in order to understand the modern problems that it faces in order to fix them to build a better future.
Nice. I agree. Ava, how about you? Is history your subject, and do you have like a special area you love?
I do like some topics of history. Okay. I think it's really interesting to learn a lot of different periods of times. And I really like learning about the women's suffrage, and I love how they get the freedom to vote.
1920, right? We got the right to vote, yeah. And we're not looking back. We're not looking back. Ladies, what did you learn today in this tour? We had a fabulous tour of so many things.
I would say one of the biggest things I learned is that there is a lot of collaboration out there, more than you see in like the federal government. I mean, when we were waiting for the session to start, when they were having recess at the beginning, I mean, everybody was talking to each other, and it seemed really friendly. And I think that a lot of times you get what is portrayed to citizens is a lot of division. And it was really nice to see collaboration and friendly discussion and all of the stuff that people tend to think is declining in America.
It's interesting, yeah, and they're colleagues, right?
Yeah.
And we even noted that sometimes they're there till midnight, so it must build some connection and relationships, right? What about yourself?
I was really interested to see like just the participation process, because I'm taking a government class in school, but I never actually see what's happening. And we saw like 3 debates today. It was really amazing to see the different sides, everyone collaborating, and you just realize that this legislation, what they're doing, affects us. We're always focused on the president and the federal level and all of these big things happening, but we kind of lose sight of our local government. And I think this really just showed me how important it is to see what the representatives are doing.
So Eileen, one of my favorite spots here in the library is where they keep all the old House journals. So you can go back and look at the history and learn a lot about it. And in this corner, they actually have the section from 1920s. And in 1923, after women got the right to vote, a woman got elected to the state legislature from Falmouth, Sylvia Donaldson. She actually represented Brockton because she was living there at the time. She was a school teacher and became a principal, but then came back after her service in the legislature to Falmouth and is actually buried next to Catherine Lee Bates in Falmouth.
Sakes, yeah.
And
Never
many
heard of
folks
her.
don't know about her.
Yeah.
Now, she was a Republican, but the same year a Democrat from Boston got elected too, Susan Fitzgerald. Now, Susan only lasted 1 term. Sylvia was there for multiple terms. And in 1926, the speaker actually put her in the chair with a gavel, and it was the first time a woman ever ran the legislative body. And the journals, I actually keep my business card in here because I used to come with school groups and try to figure out which one is it, which one is
What a secret.
And I figured, well, how many people pick up the 1923 journal? So if I leave my business card here, it'll all be okay. And so they have these things called orders where you take action in the House. So when they were sitting the members, the recognition of the first feminine members of the House, Mr. Hayes of Boston, presented an order, and that's when they recognized the 2 members. The members of the House of Representatives welcome in this new era in the public life of the Commonwealth and assure their feminine colleagues of deep appreciation of the high type of service which their membership portends, and be it further ordered that a copy of this order engrossed on parchment be given by the Secretary of the Commonwealth to Representative M. Sylvia Donaldson of Brockton, elected from Brockton. And Falmouth. And it was adopted by 218 to 0. Imagine that, a unanimous vote.
Yeah, exactly. So now I'm whispering a little bit because we are in the Massachusetts State Library, which is amazing. And I'm with Representative David Vieira and Representative Ted Phillips from Sharon. And we're here to talk not just about this library, which I hope, Representative Vieira, you can fill us in on some of the details here, but also about the Deborah Sampson bill as well. So, Representative Vieira, can you tell us a little bit about where we are?
Sure. So we're at the back end of the Massachusetts State House in the State Library, which does have an affiliation with the State Archive out at Columbia Point. Sometimes researchers will request materials that can be brought. Any member of the public can come here during normal business hours. And once a month, they actually have author talks. So you can come in person for a lunchtime, I think with a brown bag lunch type of author talk, or since COVID, they do a hybrid now. So you can actually go onto the state website,
FCTV actually broadcasts those
you-
as
and
well
you
if
do?
you want to
Oh,
catch them. So they're great. Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. So that's where we're at, and we've got a lot of historical documents that are accessed through here, as well as a circulating collection, a smaller circulating collection of more current literature. But around us, we have all the old journals from the house back from the 1920s and 1800s, and so it's pretty cool.
And then we're going to talk about the Deborah Sampson bill. Can you talk about that? Because you're from Sharon,
Yes,
which is
indeed.
where she's from.
That's
right?
correct.
Okay.
I'm very, very, very proud to represent Sharon in the Massachusetts House of Representatives. And as you may know, one of our most famous citizen is Deborah Sampson. Deborah Sampson was the first female soldier to serve our country in the Continental Army. And so we are exceptionally proud of the work that she did. She disguised herself as a man using the name Robert Shurtleff, after trying multiple times, she was successful in enlisting in the Continental Army. She actually did she saw battle. She was shot in the leg. There's some back and forth about whether the truth of it, but she actually is said to have removed the bullet from her leg herself in order to keep other people from recognizing that she was not a man. And so we think that she is certainly worthy of recognition, and Representative Vieira has been working very long time, actually, worked with my predecessor in the legislature to make sure that we are recognizing Deborah appropriately here at the Massachusetts State House. So I'll let...
What Representative Phillips didn't mention is he worked in the building. He was a legislative aide. And when we had the first site visit to Sharon, he organized it and hosted us. And then the rep at the time decided not to seek re-election. And now he's my colleague as the representative from the community. So it was kind of cool. So I was up here getting, with this constituent, getting the award called the Deborah Sampson Award. And it's given each year by the Women Veterans Network in the Department of Veteran Services to a female veteran in Massachusetts. And I had nominated someone from Falmouth, and she won the award. And so we came up and we had the ceremony. And then I always joke, the truth about it was we went to Cheers, and I always joke, where everybody knows your name. Right. And she said to me, she goes, how come there's no Deborah Sampson thing up there at the State House? And I said, well, Nancy, I don't know. That's a good idea, but maybe we can do something about that. So we began this process of a resolution to create the commission to look in the building, figure out what type of, is it a statue, is it a bust, is it a painting, right. How would this, and that passed unanimously. And I gave a speech and I talked about, we wanted everybody to know her name, because it all started at Cheers, right? But we wanted everybody to know, but not just Deborah Sampson, as the official heroine of the Commonwealth. Since the 1980s, Governor Dukakis signed the bill that recognized Deborah Sampson as the official heroine of the Commonwealth, and yet she doesn't appear in our capital. Right? So it passes.
And she took a bullet for the country.
And she took
that. She did.
Yeah, and she sure as heck didn't have to, because she could have said they would have not expected her to do that. Right?
And she got a pension.
Because of George Washington, I think, right? I think I heard that. That might be apocryphal, but I think I heard that.
No, she was the first one to successfully petition. She petitioned the Congress in the early 1800s. And actually, I believe it was Paul Revere.
Was that Revere did the
I think
advocated
Paul Revere. He actually sent a letter of support in support of her receiving a pension. And General Washington did agree. Then President Washington agreed that she should be the first pensioned female veteran in the United States.
They took the money from Benedict Arnold and gave it to her.
don't know what they use as a revenue source, but if that's the case, I'm okay with it.
Have to do that, right?
Absolutely.
A more fitting person to give it to, right?
So when they honor her, and they will, because your bill's going to pass, what will happen? Will we see her as a bust somewhere in this building?
That's what the commission will work on. So the commission will be members of various veterans service organizations, the Women Veterans Network, a representative of the curatorial staff here at the State House, and then some elected representatives, including the chairs of the Veteran and Foreign Affairs Committee, who will co-chair the House and Senate chairs, will co-chair the commission. And so we'll be discussing where, how, what, cost, and then come back with a report and a recommendation to the general court to then actually statutorily place where it will happen. And then if necessary, we'll work on appropriation, whether it's public-private funding. So right now I'm working on a project with the U.S. Coast Guard to have the Coast Guard Memorial here, because the U.S. Coast Guard was founded in Massachusetts. And we already have commissioned the artist. It's going to be a large mural painting. The curator had found it. The funny part was that legislation passed 22 years ago, and the rep didn't get reelected.
Oh, no kidding.
And no one implemented it. So she reached out to me. She works in my district and said, I want to get this going again, and got a bunch of Navy former admirals and folks.
She really cared.
She wanted to get it back going. So we've been meeting for the last 2 years, and we actually are raising money. We've raised about half the money with a nonprofit group, and the artist has already started the project.
I did not realize that Massachusetts was where the Coast Guard started. I did not realize that.
So the Revenue Cutter Service, the Humane Society, and the Life Saving Service, they merged to become what is now the United States Coast Guard, but all 3 subdivisions were also created in Massachusetts. And that mural will tell that story. There'll be portions of each of those services blended together to be the birth of the United States.
One of the things when you hang around with Representative Vieira is you find out he knows everything.
Well, I don't know about that. You find out what my wife says, that I'm full of useless information.
But it's some great history, some really great history.
So Falmouth, we're not with just one, but now we have 2 state representatives with us. We are joined, myself and Representative David Vieira, with our new representative, Thomas Moakley. So they're both going to help us talk about the budget process, and they're going to talk about what it's like to be a newbie and what it's like to be a dean. So, Representative Moakley, how's it going?
It's going amazing. I love this job already. I'm so grateful to Falmouth, Martha's Vineyard, and Nantucket that put me here. It's really fantastic time to be in government. A lot of people think that's a surprising thing to say, but I think at the state level, when everybody else is having a lot of distrust in government at all sorts of levels, that means that we have a higher responsibility to do our jobs to the best of our ability. And that's what we're doing here. I've learned a lot from Representative Vieira, who I knew actually back from when I was a Boy Scout and ran the microphones at town meeting in Falmouth. And so he's been great at helping me learn the process, start to meet some of my colleagues here. And as we begin the budget process this week, we're in day 2 now, just sort of learning the ropes and looking out for my district.
What has the dean been able to help you with here? Because he's been around for a bit, so has he... do you have close offices? Does he help you with how to read bills? Or I know you're an attorney yourself and you've had a lot of experience, but what was he able to walk you through?
So the collaborative atmosphere that there is. So, Representative Vieira and I are of different parties, but we are both Falmouth kids, and we both have a love of government. We both felt a calling to public service, and that's the basis in which, so many people in this building have come here in. And so when you're dealing with something like a budget, huge budget for, a really busy state that does a lot of really busy things, it's all about balance. And so learning about the specifics of programs that I might have not had any familiarity with in my prior role as an assistant DA, Representative Vieira has been able to explain, the details of. And then when, current events change things, like the Pecasset Mental Hospital, he led the delegation on the House side to try to save that, and we were successful.
Yeah, we were. And can you tell us a little bit about exactly the process of the budget? It will go for 4 more days you'll talk about it, or how many more days will you talk about it before it then goes to the Senate?
Yeah, so we've sort of in a pattern now of 3 to 4 days. So we're in day 2. So probably late tomorrow night we will be able to finish this. If not, we'll come back in on Thursday to finish it up. But there's 1,650 amendments to this budget, which is over 200 pages. And the process starts with the governor back in January putting out House 1, her version of the budget, which included, as Representative Moakley said, closing the Pecasset Mental Health Hospital, which is when the delegation on the Cape all came together. We hosted a hearing on the Senate side. Senator Fernandez, former rep in the same seat that Thomas has now, we organized a forum down at the center itself. We had people from the neighborhood and from the workers at the facility and patients and their families that had received services there. We raised the level of dialogue to the point where when House 4000, which is the Ways and Means budget that we're voting on this week, came out, there was a base protection in the number of seats throughout Massachusetts in the mental health hospital system. what we're trying to do now, through the delegation working together, and it's the next amendment, is we're trying to specifically say that the 16 beds on Cape Cod at Pecasset get preserved, not just the aggregate number statewide. So we knew we were freezing closures of beds, but now we're doing that extra lift to say specifically at this location. Oh, and by the way, for the same staffing level, we could open up 8 additional beds, and there are 8 rooms that were closed for an outpatient program a number of years ago. No new staff required to operate that. So there's 8 revenue generating beds, more access for our local residents, and helps balance what the administration perceived as an operational deficit at the site. And it cost us food and durable medical supplies, right? So that's what the delegation's been working on, and we're not there yet. We're in the process of doing that, but we know that the work that we did, Republicans and Democrats together, leading up to the release of the House Ways and Means budget, was to preserve the mental health beds in the system, and now it's what can we do to reimagine, is the term I like to use, reimagine the services at Pecasset. So we're doing consolidated amendments. Earlier today, we were here with the students from the Daughters of the American Revolution, Good Citizen, and they got to see one of these consolidated amendments where there's, hundreds of amendments that come down to one consolidated vote. But there's some debate if pieces of amendments that individual reps put forward are not in the consolidated amendment. There can be debate, and that was the debate that we saw today. So we're hoping Wednesday night, but we'll finish up this year.
And Massachusetts has a rule that you have to balance the budget. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
It's a constitutional amendment.
And the governor's budget was how much, and how much is being added right now by the House?
So again, nothing is final.
Right.
The governor's budget came out, I believe, the end of January, maybe early February, as House 1. And then over the following several weeks, members of the House Ways and Means Committee convened several hearings all across the state, and including in Hyannis. And then about 2 weeks ago, the House Ways and Means budget came out, which is H 4000. And that's the bill that, as Representative Vieira said, there's been 1,650 amendments filed. And over the past 2 days, we've been slowly churning through there, and some money is added.
A little money, right?
Yep. Sometimes it can add, sometimes it can remove. So the final number will be determined. But I believe the governor's original proposal was about in the realm of $62 billion.
Yeah, and so there's wiggle room now in this week. So the release was around $600 million shy of the original proposal, but in shifting priorities, right? And that allows the ability for this dialogue and these debates and amendments to be able to fill in, because there's what we call a consensus revenue figure. So Ways and Means and the administration meet, and they meet with, right here in Gardner Auditorium actually, they have a day-long hearing where economists come in and other folks like the Commissioner of Revenue, and they look at economic indicators and try to come up with the consensus revenue figure for the next fiscal year, and then we back these budgets into that revenue picture. Now, the governor also proposed a number of hikes in fees and other revenue generating sources that would have made this what we call a money bill, and can change what you're going to have for revenue, because you have a consensus revenue figure based on existing revenue sources. So if you raise a tax or a fee, get more revenue, then you have the ability to even go above the consensus number, right? Sure. And usually they'll try to do like a re-estimate. But the House and the Speaker's leadership was to hold and remove all new fees and taxes from this budget. And because in Massachusetts, money bills have to originate in the House, this prohibits the Senate from raising taxes in this budget.
See how important you guys are.
That's why we call it the People's House.
But that's a big deal, though, because there's a lot of uncertainty when, at the federal level, when you're talking about tariffs, and, we're already facing a huge affordability crisis, at home on the Cape. And so, under the leadership of the Speaker of the House and the Ways and Means Committee, to say, now's not the time for any new taxes or fees, that's a pretty big move.
Yeah. And we looked at, while we were on, when we watched you people speaking today, we talked about immigration. There was a bill on immigration, or, well, detention from law enforcement. We saw one on 40Bs. We saw some really juicy stuff that's actually federal stories too. So you're right in the middle of it, right?
Absolutely. And so sometimes you get amendments that are these sweeping policy issues, that might be attention grabbing. But what you see a lot of too is people who are looking out for nonprofits and government agencies in their districts. And that's us coming here to do our job. It's both the big things and the little things, and always answering the phone when someone needs help with a state agency. So, if you're a resident of Falmouth, please reach out to us, because that's a big part of our job too.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Just another day at the office for Representative David Vieira. And what an office. Our thanks to him, to Representative Thomas Moakley, to the Daughters of the Revolution, and to everyone who made our day on the road so special. We'll catch up with the representative again sometime soon. I'm Eileen Preston. Thanks for watching.